When my daughter Emily pushed me against the kitchen wall and screamed, "Oh, you are going to the nursing home, or you sleep with the horses in the barn. Choose now." I felt my heart break into 1,000 pieces, not because of the threat itself, but because in her eyes I saw only coldness, as if I were an old piece of furniture taking up too much space. What she did not know is that I had kept a secret for 30 years, a secret that would change everything between us. And in that moment, I decided it was time to use the only weapon I had left, the truth. But before we continue, check if you are subscribed to the channel Elderly Stories, and write in the comments where you are watching this video from. We love knowing how far our stories are reaching. My name is Sarah. I am 62 years old, and all my life I believed that a mother's love could overcome anything, that it was enough to give everything, to sacrifice until the very last hair so that children would recognize that love. But life taught me in a brutal way that this is not always the case. I raised Emily alone since she was 5 years old. My husband David abandoned us without looking back, leaving only debts and a simple house on the outskirts of a quiet town in the Midwest. The house had a large plot of land with some horses that David raised as a hobby. When he left, I thought about selling everything, but Emily loved those animals. I saw her little eyes shine every time she petted the horses' manes, and I did not have the heart to take that away from her, so I kept going. I worked as a seamstress during the day and as a cleaner at night. My hands hardened, my back hurt constantly, but every time I saw Emily smile, I thought it was all worth it. I paid for her studies, her clothes, her dreams. When she wanted to go to college to study business administration in the city, I sold the jewelry my mother left me to pay for the first semester in Chicago. It was at the university where she met Michael, a boy from a wealthy family studying the same major. From the start, I noticed he looked at our simple life with disdain. When he came to visit us for the first time, he wrinkled his nose at the modest house, the horses in the pasture, the peeling paint on the walls. But Emily was in love, and who was I to interfere with my daughter's happiness? They got married 3 years later in a ceremony for which I drained my last savings to help pay. Michael did not even thank me. He just smiled that fake smile and went back to talking with his fancy friends. That day, for the first time, I felt I was losing my daughter, not to marriage, but to a world I did not belong to. The first years were quiet. Emily visited me occasionally, always in a hurry, always looking at her watch. I pretended not to notice the growing distance between us. Until 2 years ago, everything changed. David, my ex-husband, died in a car accident and left a will. I never imagined that the man who abandoned us would have anything to leave behind. But during the years he was away, David built a small fortune with investments. And for some reason I will never understand, he left it all to Emily. $200,000, an amount that for us was like winning the lottery. When the lawyer gave us the news, I saw the shine in my daughter's eyes. It was not joy. It was something deeper and more disturbing. It was ambition. Michael was by her side, and his smile gave me a chill. At that moment I had a bad feeling, but I pushed it away. Emily was my daughter, the girl I raised with so much love. She would never turn her back on me. How wrong I was. 3 months after receiving the inheritance, Emily and Michael appeared at my house with a proposal. They wanted to build a guest lodge on the land, taking advantage of the fact that the region was starting to attract tourists interested in agrotourism. They needed me to sign some documents transferring the property to their name temporarily to get financing from the bank. Something inside me screamed not to sign those papers. But Emily took my hands and said with that sweet voice that melted my heart, "Mom, trust me. We are going to build something beautiful here, and you will be able to live your last years in comfort without needing to work so hard." Michael added, "Miss Sarah, you deserve to rest. We will take care of everything." I signed. May God forgive me, but I signed. Construction began 2 months later. They tore down the old fence, renovated the house, built cabins where the horses used to graze freely. The transformation was fast and brutal. And along with the remodeling of the property came the change in the treatment I received from Emily. First it was small things. She started correcting me in front of others. She said I spoke poorly, that my clothes were inappropriate. Then she started treating me like an employee in my own home. She asked me to clean, cook, wash the laundry for the lodge guests. I obeyed, thinking I was helping, that it was my contribution to the family business. But things got worse. Michael started ignoring me completely as if I were invisible. Emily started complaining that I occupied the best room in the house, that they needed that space for guests. They moved me to a tiny room in the back without a window that looked more like a storage closet. And then 3 months ago, I discovered the truth. I was looking for a document of mine in a drawer in the study when I found the property papers. I read with trembling hands. The house, the land. Everything was registered in Emily and Michael's names. It was not temporary. They had tricked me. I confronted my daughter that same night. She did not even blink. She just said with a coldness that cut me like a blade, "Mom, you are old. You do not understand these things. We did what was best for everyone. Now you have a place to live, without worries." I tried to argue, to say that this house was mine, that I had built everything with my sweat. She rolled her eyes and left the room. From that day on, the treatment got even worse. Emily called me dead weight, a burden, a stubborn old woman. Michael laughed at the cruel jokes she made about my age, about my tired body, about my shaking hands. And I, like a fool, stayed there taking it all because she was my daughter, and I still had hope that she would return to being the sweet girl I raised. Until that Tuesday morning. I got up early as always, prepared coffee for the guests, cleaned the kitchen. My back hurt more than usual, but I kept working. Around 10 in the morning, Emily entered the kitchen like a hurricane. Her face was red with rage. "Mom, I warned you not to touch the guests' things," she screamed. I stood there confused, but I was just cleaning the room like you asked me. You broke a vase. A vase that cost $500. Do you see? You are good for nothing anymore. I tried to explain that I had not broken any vase, that maybe a guest had knocked it over, but she did not want to listen. Michael appeared in the doorway with that malicious smile I had learned to fear. "Emily, honey, we already talked about this," he said calmly. "Your mom is getting too old to help here. She is getting in the way more than she is helping." Emily nodded and then said the words that changed everything. "Mom, we decided. Either you go to a retirement home that we will pay for, or you go sleep with the horses in the barn. You choose." The silence that followed was deafening. I looked at my daughter, seeking some sign that this was a cruel joke, an empty threat. But her eyes were serious, determined. She was really giving me that ultimatum. It was then that something inside me broke. It was not my heart, which was already in pieces for months. It was something different. It was the fear, the submission, the foolish hope that things could get better. All that vanished, and in its place emerged a cold and crystalline clarity. "Okay," I said, my voice coming out firmer than I expected. "I am leaving." Emily seemed surprised. Maybe she expected me to beg, to cry, to humiliate myself even more. But before that, I continued. "I need to make a call." I went up to my little back room, that tight space without a window where I had spent the last few months. My hands were shaking as I searched the bottom of the old suitcase I kept under the bed. There it was, the yellowed envelope I kept hidden for 3 decades. Inside it, a document I swore I would only use in a last resort, and the last resort had arrived. I took my old cell phone, the one Emily made fun of because it was from Grandma's time. I dialed a number that was engraved in my memory, even though I had never called. My heart was beating so fast, I thought it was going to explode right there. 3 rings. 4. Then a male voice answered, "Turner and Associates office." "Good morning, good morning," I replied, trying to control my voice. "I would like to speak with Attorney Charles Turner, please. It is about the David case." There was a pause on the other end. "1 moment, please." I waited, listening to the hold music. Downstairs, I heard the steps of Emily and Michael, their voices discussing something about the next guests, living their lives as if I did not exist, as if I were just an old piece of furniture to be discarded. Ms. Sarah Charles's voice was kind, worried. "Are you okay? It has been so long since I heard from you. "Attorney, the time has come," I said simply. "I need you to do what we talked about 30 years ago." Silence. Then a heavy sigh. "Are you completely sure?" "Once we start, there will be no turning back." "I am sure." "Very well. I will prepare everything. Can you come to the office tomorrow at 10 in the morning? I will be there." I hung up and sat on the bed for a long moment, holding the envelopes against my chest. Inside it was the truth I had hidden from Emily all her life, a truth about her father, about the inheritance she received, about lies that were built over decades. When David abandoned us, he was not just running from the responsibility of being a father and husband, he was running from a crime. My ex-husband had embezzled money from the company where he worked, a considerable amount. I discovered it by accident a few days before he disappeared. I found hidden documents in his study, bank statements from accounts I did not know about. I confronted David that night. He panicked. He said he had done it because he wanted to give us a better life, that he was going to return the money. But it was too late. The company had discovered him, and the police were investigating. He fled before being arrested, leaving me alone with a small child and a mountain of unanswered questions. What Emily never knew is that the money her father invested and multiplied over the years was stolen money. Her inheritance came from a crime, and I had proof of everything. Documents David sent me years later in a letter asking for forgiveness, explaining everything, begging me not to tell Emily. I kept that letter. I kept the documents, and I kept the secret. Not for David, but for my daughter. I did not want her to grow up knowing her father was a criminal, that the money she dreamed of receiving one day had a dirty origin. But now Emily had used that stolen money to rob me too, to take my house, my dignity, my life, and I was no longer going to protect her. I went down the stairs with the suitcase in my hand. It was a small suitcase with only some clothes and personal items. I did not need anything else from that house. Everything that really mattered was in the envelope I carried inside my purse. Emily was in the living room with Michael. When they saw me with the suitcase, she raised an eyebrow. "Did you decide then nursing home or barn?" "Neither one nor the other." I replied calmly. "I am going to stay with a friend for a few days until I resolve my situation." I saw the relief on her face. She probably thought I was accepting my fate, leaving their lives without making a scene. Michael flashed that satisfied smile of his. "Good decision, Ms. Sarah. It is best for everyone." I looked at my daughter. She avoided my gaze, and in that moment I felt a pang of pain. She was still my little girl, somewhere behind that mask of coldness. But she was a girl I no longer recognized. "Emily," I said softly, "are you sure this is what you want?" To kick me out this way, she finally looked me in the eyes, and what I saw there gave me the absolute certainty that I was doing the right thing. There was no remorse, no doubt, only impatience. "Mom, stop the drama. You will be fine, and so will we." I nodded. "Okay, so be it. But I want you to remember this moment, because in a few days you are going to understand that choices have consequences." Michael laughed. "How dramatic, Ms. Sarah. You sound like a soap opera character." I did not answer. I just took my suitcase and walked out the door. The horses neighed when they saw me pass. I stopped for a moment and petted Star's mane, the oldest mare, the one Emily loved so much as a child. The mare rested her snout on my hand, as if she understood I was leaving. "Take care of her," I whispered to the animal, "even if she does not deserve it." I walked down the dirt road until I reached the highway. I called Linda, my friend of decades, and explained the situation quickly. She, without asking questions, said I could stay at her house as long as I needed. That night, lying in the guest room of Linda's house, I could not sleep. I thought about everything that had happened, about how I had reached this point. A part of me still doubted if I was doing the right thing. But then I remembered Emily's look, that cold contempt, and my determination was renewed. The next morning arrived slowly. I got ready with care. I put on my best clothes, a blue blouse I had sewn myself years ago. At 9:30, I took a bus to the city center. Attorney Charles Turner's office was in an old but well-preserved building. The receptionist recognized me immediately, even after so many years. She took me directly to his room, Attorney Charles was older, with completely white hair now, but the look was still the same, penetrating and kind at the same time. He stood up and shook my hand firmly. "Ms. Sarah, I am very sorry it has come to this point. Me too, attorney, but I do not see another way out." He pointed me to a chair and took a thick folder from the shelf. "Very well, let's review everything from the beginning. When David came to see me 32 years ago, he was desperate. He confessed the embezzlement of money. He handed me all the documents and asked me to keep this as life insurance." "Life insurance," I repeated, confused. Attorney Charles nodded. "He feared the company would go after his family. That is why he created a document confessing everything and naming you as the sole legitimate heir of any assets he might come to have. The idea was to protect you and Emily from future lawsuits." He opened the folder and began showing me documents. I recognized David's handwriting on several pages, notarized signatures, witnesses. "But what does this mean now?" I asked. "It means, Ms. Sarah, that legally the inheritance Emily received should have been yours. David left everything in her name because he thought it would be easier, less bureaucratic. But this document here," he tapped a specific sheet, "annuls his will, because it was made under pressure, hiding the criminal origin of the money." I felt my head spinning. So the money should have gone to you. And since your daughter used that money to acquire your property fraudulently, making you sign deceptive documents, we have legal grounds to reverse everything. "Is she going to lose the lodge?" I asked, feeling a mixture of relief and sadness. Attorney Charles paused. "Not necessarily. It will depend on how you want to proceed. We can return the property to your name, annul the fraudulent transfer. As for the inheritance money, it will go to you legally. Emily will have to return what she spent. But," he looked at me seriously, "this will completely destroy the relationship between you two. She already destroyed it," I replied with a voice that did not sound like mine. "When she gave me the choice between the nursing home and the barn, she destroyed everything that was left between us." Attorney Charles spent the next 2 hours explaining every detail of the legal process to me. My head was spinning with so much information: hearings, documents, deadlines. But one thing was becoming clearer and clearer. I had every legal right to recover what was mine. I was not asking for a favor. I was demanding justice. I signed the necessary papers to start the process. The lawyer guaranteed me that everything would be done discreetly at the beginning. Official notifications would be sent. Emily would have the opportunity to defend herself. But he also warned me about something that made me swallow hard. "Ms. Sarah, when your daughter receives the summons, she will be furious, and she will probably try to find you, pressure you, maybe even threaten you. It is important that you be emotionally prepared for that moment." I nodded, but inside I was dying of fear. I knew my daughter. I knew how she could be when crossed, but something had changed in me after that ultimatum. I was no longer the submissive mother willing to accept any crumb of affection. I was a woman tired of being trampled on. And that woman had teeth. I left the office feeling strange. My body was heavy with tension, but there was something lighter in my chest, as if a weight had been lifted off me. For the first time in months, I felt I had some control over my own life. Linda was waiting for me on the corner of the building. She insisted on accompanying me to a coffee shop to talk. While we drank coffee, I told her everything. My friend listened in silence. Her eyes watered when I talked about Emily's ultimatum. "Sarah, you were very patient, too patient," she said, holding my hand. "That girl needs to learn that a mother is not a doormat. I am afraid, Linda, afraid that I am doing the wrong thing. She is my daughter, and you are her mother." Linda interrupted me firmly. "But that does not mean you have to accept being treated like trash. You gave everything for her. You worked until your bones hurt, and she responded with contempt. That is not love, Sarah. That is abuse." Her words echoed in my mind all the way back. Abuse. It was a strong word, but maybe it was exactly what I was suffering. Emotional, psychological, financial abuse. And I had accepted it all in silence because I did not want to admit that my daughter, the one I raised with so much love, was capable of treating me like this. 4 days passed. 4 days of anxiety waiting for the storm I knew would come. Linda tried to distract me. She took me for walks. We watched movies together at night. But my head was always at the lodge, imagining Emily receiving the court notification. On the 5th morning, my cell phone rang. It was an unknown number. I answered with my heart racing. "Mom," Emily's voice sounded strange, too controlled. "I need you to come to the house. Now. Emily, now," she screamed, and then the call cut off. Linda, who was in the kitchen, looked at me worried. "Was it her?" I nodded. She received the notification. "Do you want me to go with you?" I thought for a moment. A part of me wanted to accept, wanted to have someone by my side. But another part knew that this was between my daughter and me. It was time to face what I myself had set in motion. No, I have to go alone. But thank you, friend, for everything. The road to the lodge seemed to last an eternity and at the same time pass in the blink of an eye. My body was trembling all over when I got off the bus and started walking down the dirt road. The horses were in the pasture, grazing peacefully, unaware of the human drama that was about to occur. Emily was on the porch holding some papers in her hands. Even from afar, I could see she was furious. Her face was red, fists clenched. Michael was by her side, but for the first time he seemed less confident, more worried. "How dare you!" Emily screamed before I got close. "How dare you do this to me!" I stopped a few meters away, keeping my voice calm. "Do what Emily claim, what is rightfully mine." She walked down the porch steps with heavy steps, waving the papers in the air. "This is a lie. You are lying to try to steal what my father left me. I am not lying. Everything in those documents is true. Your father left everything written with witnesses before he died." Michael approached, trying to look threatening. "Miss Sarah, you do not know what you are getting into. We have very good lawyers. We are going to destroy this ridiculous lawsuit." I looked at him with a calm that surprised me. "Do whatever you think is necessary, but the truth does not change. The money you used was stolen, and you tricked me to take my house. All of that is documented. You have nothing." Emily screamed, tears of rage falling down her face. "You are a bitter old woman who does not accept that I grew up, that I have my own life. You are doing this for revenge. Revenge!" I repeated, feeling my own anger starting to rise. "Revenge. Because you gave me a choice between the nursing home and the barn, because you treated me like trash for months, because you stole my house using my love for you against me. I did not steal anything. You donated. You signed the papers of your own free will, after you tricked me and made me believe it was temporary. That is called fraud. Emily, and you know it. She came towards me with so much force I thought she was going to hit me." Michael held her by the arm. "Calm down, honey. It won't help." Emily broke free from him abruptly. "You want the house. You want the money. You can keep it, but never look at my face again. Never look for me again. To me, you died today." The words were like knives, each one piercing my heart. But I did not let her see my pain. I just replied with a firm voice, "If that is what you want, I accept. But one day, Emily, you are going to understand what you lost. And it won't be the house or the money. It will be something that no money can buy. What your sacrificed mother love." "I am sick of that story." She spat the words with so much hate she barely seemed like my daughter. "No," I replied softly. "The opportunity to have someone who loved you unconditionally, someone who would have given her life for you, that you lost today. And unlike the house and the money, there is no way to get that back." I turned around and started walking back. I heard Emily screaming something behind me, but I did not understand the words. It did not matter anymore. Every step I took moved me away from that life, from that pain, from that version of me that accepted being treated like nothing. Linda met me at the gate. She had stayed waiting, hidden behind a tree, worried that I needed help. When she saw me, she ran and hugged me tight. It was only in her arms that I allowed the tears to fall. I cried like I hadn't cried in years. I cried for the daughter I lost, for the illusion that was broken, for all those years of sacrifice that seemed to have been in vain. But I also cried with relief because finally I had chosen my own path. Finally, I had said enough. The following weeks were a confusion of paperwork, hearings, declarations. Attorney Charles was tireless, presenting every document, every proof. Emily and Michael hired really good lawyers, but the truth was stronger than any pretty argument. The fraud in the property transfer was proven. I had signed, believing it was temporary. And there were witnesses who confirmed it. The inheritance money had its origin questioned, and David's documents spoke for themselves. During that period, I had no contact with Emily. A part of me hoped she would appear, that she would realize the mistake she had made, that she would apologize. But nothing happened. The silence between us was absolute. 3 months after the start of the process, the judge issued his sentence. The property would return to my name. The transfer had been done fraudulently. That was clear. As for the inheritance money, the thing was more complicated. The judge recognized that David's will had flaws, but since Emily had used the money in good faith, not knowing of its criminal origin, she would not be forced to return it all. The solution was a settlement. Emily would keep half the value of the original inheritance, and the other half would be transferred to me. In addition, she would have to pay me compensation for the improper use of the property during those months. In total, I would receive around $120,000. Attorney Charles called me to his office to explain everything. Ms. Sarah, I know it is not everything you deserved, but it is a significant victory. You recover your house and receive financial compensation that will ensure your comfort for the coming years. I nodded, still processing everything. And the lodge. The cabins they built, they are part of the property, so they return to your name too. Emily and Michael will have 30 days to vacate the premises and remove only their personal belongings. Everything that was built or attached to the property stays. The irony did not go unnoticed. They had used my love for Emily to rob me, and now all their work, all the investment they made, would return to my hands. It was poetic justice, but one that brought me no joy. Attorney, I asked hesitantly, and if I wanted to make a different proposal, an agreement outside the records. He looked at me curiously. What kind of agreement I spent the following days thinking. The legal victory had a bitter taste. Yes, I had recovered what was mine, but I had lost my daughter in the process. And as much as she had hurt me deeply, as much as she had treated me with cruelty, she was still my Emily, the girl I rocked in my arms, who I comforted when she had nightmares, who smiled at me as if I were her whole world. Was there a way to do justice without completely destroying what was left between us? It was Linda who made me see the situation from another angle. We were drinking tea on the porch of her house when she asked me, Sarah, what do you really want? Revenge or peace? It is not revenge, I protested. It is justice. I know, friend. But sometimes justice and peace are different things. You can be right and still be unhappy. You can win everything and lose what matters most. But she treated me like trash, Linda. She gave me a choice between the nursing home and the barn as if I were an animal. And that was horrible. She agreed. Unforgivable, even. But answer me something. Do you want your daughter to learn a lesson, or do you want her to disappear from your life forever? The question caught me off guard. I stayed silent for a long time, looking at the cup of tea in my hands. What did I really want? I want her to understand. I finally replied, I want her to see how much she hurt me. I want her to feel, even if just a little bit, what I felt when she threw me out of my own house. Then maybe there is a way to do it without cutting all ties, Linda suggested gently. That night, I came up with a plan. The next day, I called Attorney Charles and explained what I had in mind. He stayed silent for a moment. Then he said, Miss Sarah, you have a heart much bigger than I imagined. I will prepare the documents. A week later, Emily and Michael received a new notification. It was not an execution of the sentence, but a settlement proposal. They were to present themselves at Attorney Charles's office for a meeting. I arrived at the office half an hour before the agreed time. My heart was beating wildly. My hands were sweating. Attorney Charles received me with an encouraging smile. You are doing the right thing. Trust yourself. When Emily and Michael entered the room, the atmosphere froze. My daughter avoided looking at me, sitting as far away as possible. Michael seemed nervous, playing with his hands constantly. His lawyer, a man in an expensive suit and arrogant air, maintained a neutral expression. Attorney Charles began the meeting. Gentlemen, we are here because my client would like to propose an agreement different from the one determined by the court sentence. Emily's lawyer raised an eyebrow. What kind of agreement Ms. Sarah is willing not to execute the sentence completely under certain conditions? Attorney Charles explained, looking at me to confirm. I nodded and he continued. First condition, the property returns to Ms. Sarah's name as determined by the judge. This is non-negotiable. Emily finally looked at me, her eyes full of contained rage, but she said nothing. Second condition, instead of vacating the property completely, Emily and Michael can continue managing the lodge, but now as tenants paying a fair monthly rent to Ms. Sarah. There was a moment of stunned silence. Her lawyer leaned forward. And what would be the amount of that rent? Attorney Charles slid a paper across the table. $3,000 a month with annual adjustment. It is a value below the market, considering the size of the property and the commercial potential. Michael took the paper, analyzing the numbers. For the first time, I saw something resembling hope on his face, but Emily remained rigid with her arms crossed. Third condition, Attorney Charles continued. Ms. Sarah waives the compensation due to her, but in exchange she will have the right to live on the property whenever she wants in a room that will be designated exclusively for her. Emily and Michael cannot prevent it or question her presence. That is ridiculous. Emily finally spoke, her voice hard. Does she want to humiliate us? Force us to see her every day? I felt a pang of pain with her words, but I maintained my composure. Attorney Charles looked at me, asking silent permission to continue. I nodded. Fourth and last condition, he said, his voice becoming more serious. Emily and Michael will participate in family therapy sessions with Ms. Sarah once a week for 6 months. It is not negotiable. Therapy. Michael practically spat the word. This is absurd. For the first time since they entered, I spoke. Is it this, or the complete execution of the sentence, you lose everything? The lodge, the business you built, the opportunity to recover something from this situation. Emily faced me, and for the first time I saw something more than rage in her eyes. There was fear there, and maybe, just maybe, a glimmer of regret. Why are you doing this? She asked, her voice breaking slightly. If it is to torture me, to rub in my face that you won, it is not about winning or losing. I interrupted her, my own voice choked up. It is about trying to save what can still be saved. It is about giving you the opportunity to understand what you did. And it is about me having the courage to look in the mirror and know that I did everything I could. Her lawyer asked for a moment to speak in private with his clients. The three of them left the room. Attorney Charles held my hand. Regardless of what they decide, you are being very brave. 15 minutes later, they returned. Emily had red eyes as if she had been crying. Michael seemed defeated. The lawyer went straight to the point. My clients accept the terms of the agreement. We signed the papers that same afternoon. Each signature seemed to weigh a ton. When we finished, Emily left the room quickly without looking back. Michael followed her but stopped at the door and turned to me. Ms. Sarah, he said in a low voice, I am sorry for the things I said, for the way I treated you. It was not a complete apology, but it was something. Michael, I replied. I hope you use this opportunity well, because there won't be another one. He nodded and left. I returned to the property on a Thursday afternoon. Linda insisted on accompanying me, and I accepted gratefully. I needed moral support for that moment. The house seemed different, and at the same time exactly the same. The cabins built by Emily were pretty, I had to admit. She had good taste. She inherited that from me. But it was not the cabins I looked at first. My eyes went straight to the pasture where the horses grazed calmly. Star. The old mare raised her head when she saw me and came trotting to the fence. I petted her snout, feeling tears burn in my eyes. I came home. I whispered to her. I came back. Linda touched my shoulder gently. Do you want me to stay with you today? No, friend, I need to do this alone. I need to reclaim this space. You know, she understood. She hugged me tight and left, not without making me promise to call if I needed anything. I entered the house slowly as if I were stepping into unknown territory. Everything was clean, organized. Emily and Michael had left my room. The real one, not that storage closet. Intact. My things were still there just as I had left them months ago. I sat on the bed and looked around. That room held so many memories. It was there where I spent sleepless nights when Emily was a baby, rocking her to sleep. It was there where I cried when David abandoned us. It was there where I dreamed of a better future for my daughter. And it was from there that I was expelled, treated like a nuisance. But now I was back. The house was mine again, legally, judicially mine, but emotionally. Emotionally, it still seemed like enemy territory. I spent the rest of the day organizing my things, cleaning, attempting to make that space feel like mine again. Emily and Michael did not appear. They were probably in one of the cabins avoiding me. It was better that way for now. We needed time to process everything. The first therapy session was scheduled for the following Monday. The chosen therapist, Dr. Laura Smith, was a specialist in family conflicts. Attorney Charles had recommended her personally, saying she was firm but compassionate. Exactly what we needed. Sunday night I could barely sleep. I imagined how that first session would be. What would I say? What would Emily say? Would she really go, or would she try to make some excuse? Monday morning. I got ready carefully. I chose a light green blouse that Emily always said looked good on me. It was a pathetic way of trying to connect with her. I knew it, but I couldn't help it. Dr. Laura's office was in an old house converted into a clinic in the city center. I arrived 15 minutes early. Emily and Michael arrived exactly on time, neither a minute more nor less. We greeted each other with a nod without words. The tension was palpable. The receptionist guided us to a spacious and cozy room with comfortable sofas and decoration that tried to be relaxing. Dr. Laura was a woman of about 50, gray hair in a bun, attentive eyes behind red-framed glasses. She greeted us warmly and asked us to sit. I chose an armchair. Emily and Michael sat together on the farthest sofa. The geography of the room already said everything about the state of our relationship. "Okay," Dr. Laura began with a soft but firm voice. "I appreciate everyone's presence. I know being here was not an easy choice, especially in current circumstances, but the fact that you accepted to come is already an important first step." Emily snorted quietly. The therapist heard it but did not comment. She just continued. "Our sessions will follow some basic rules. First, each person will have their turn to speak without interruptions. Second, there are no judgments here, only listening and attempting to understand. Third, everything said in this room stays in this room, unless it is something that represents an immediate risk to someone." She paused, observing us. "To start, I would like each of you to tell me in a few words what you expect from these sessions. Sarah, do you want to start?" I took a deep breath. "I expect that we can find some way of coexistence. I do not expect things to go back to how they were before. That is impossible, but I hope that we can at least respect each other and maybe, who knows, Emily can understand how much she hurt me." The therapist nodded and turned to my daughter. "Emily." She stayed silent for a long moment. Then with a hard voice, "I am here because they forced me. I expect nothing because I do not believe these sessions are going to change anything. My mom has always been dramatic, always played the victim. This is just one more chapter of that story." Her words were like slaps. Dr. Laura wrote something in her notebook but kept a neutral expression. "Michael?" she asked. He seemed uncomfortable. "Look, I just want to resolve this so we can go on with our lives. The lodge is starting to work. We have guests booking, but all this tension is ruining everything." "I understand," said Dr. Laura. "So here we have 3 different perspectives. Sarah seeks understanding and respect. Emily is skeptical and feels forced. Michael wants to resolve the practical situation. All are valid perspectives." She leaned forward. "But before talking about the future, we need to understand the past. Sarah, can you tell me briefly how we got here?" And then I started talking. I told about David's abandonment, about the years raising Emily alone, about the sacrifices. I talked about her marriage to Michael, about how little by little I was being pushed into a corner. I talked about the fraudulent transfer of the property, about how I was tricked. And I talked about that day, the day of the ultimatum. She told me. My voice trembled. That I had to choose between the nursing home or sleeping with the horses in the barn, as if I were an animal, as if 62 years of life of love, of dedication, were worth nothing. Emily exploded. "You are distorting everything. I never..." Emily, Dr. Laura interrupted firmly. Remember the rule: everyone speaks in their time. You will have your chance. My daughter crossed her arms furious but fell silent. I continued now with tears falling down my face. In that moment when she gave me that choice, something died inside me. It was not my love for her. That never died. It was my self-respect, my dignity that I had let die little by little during all those months of humiliation. And I realized that I needed to choose, not between the nursing home and the barn, but between continuing to be trampled on or getting up and fighting for the minimum respect I deserved. When I finished, the silence in the room was heavy. Dr. Laura passed me a box of tissues. I dried the tears, trying to regain composure. Emily, the therapist, said gently, "It is your turn. Tell your version." My daughter took a deep breath. When she started speaking, her voice was loaded with rage, but there was something else there. There was pain, too. My mom has always been like this, always playing the martyr. "Oh, I worked so hard for you. Oh, I sacrificed so much," as if I had asked for it, as if it were my fault she stayed with a man who ran away. Every word was a stab wound, but I forced myself to listen without interrupting. "She never let me grow up," Emily continued, always suffocating me with that possessive love. "When I met Michael, she did not like him from the start. I saw it in her eyes, that silent judgment. And when we decided to live together, she made all that drama. I never made drama. I could not contain myself." "Yes, you did," Emily shouted, not with words, but with those looks, those sighs, always making me feel guilty for wanting to have my own life. "Doctor," Laura raised her hand. "Sarah will have the chance to respond," Emily continued. My daughter wiped a tear that insisted on falling. When we received my father's inheritance, it was the first time in my life I had some money, some possibility to do something of my own, to build something. And of course my mom was there with that face of disapproval, thinking I was going to spend it all wrong. "I never said that I started." "You did not need to say it." Emily exploded. "It was stamped on your face, and when we had the idea of the lodge, you did not even like it. You stayed with your attitude of, 'I am supporting, but actually I think it is a terrible idea.'" Michael put his hand on her shoulder, trying to calm her. She took a deep breath before continuing. "We did not trick her with the house papers. We explained everything. You were the one who did not understand because you were never interested in these practical things." "That is not true," I protested, but Dr. Laura gave me a warning look. "And yes," Emily continued, her voice becoming lower, "I said that about the nursing home and the barn, but it was in the heat of the moment. I was stressed. You were always complaining about everything getting in the way of the guests. Getting in the way, I could not contain myself. I was working like a slave in my own house. Your house." Emily got up from the sofa. "That is the question. You never accepted that the house was ours too, that we had the right to make changes, to run our business without you controlling everything." "Enough," Dr. Laura's voice resonated in the room. We both fell silent immediately. The therapist looked at us severely. "I know there is a lot of repressed feeling here, but we will do the following. Each of you is going to breathe deeply 5 times. Now." We obeyed, although reluctantly. The air entered and left my lungs, but my heart was still racing. "Better," said Dr. Laura. "Now we will try something different. Sarah, I want you to repeat to Emily what you just heard. Not what you believe, not your interpretation, just what she said." I looked at my daughter, then at the therapist. She said that she always felt suffocated by me, that I made her feel guilty for wanting to have her own life. "Continue," encouraged Dr. Laura. She said that I disapproved of Michael from the start, and that when they wanted to make the lodge, I did not support her for real. I paused, swallowing hard. "And that she does not believe she tricked me with the house papers." Emily was looking at me surprised. Maybe she expected me to distort her words, but I had really listened to her. Emily, the therapist, turned to her. "Now you repeat what your mother said." My daughter hesitated, then murmured, "She said she raised me alone, that she made sacrifices, and that that day of the ultimatum hurt her a lot." "Continue," insisted Dr. Laura. "She said that something died inside her when I said that." Emily's voice was lower now. "And that she had to choose between continuing to be trampled on or fighting for respect. There was a moment of silence. Then the therapist said something that would change the course of everything. "You are both right, and you are both wrong." Dr. Laura's words hung in the air like a revelation neither of us expected. I looked at her confused, and by the reflection, I saw Emily had the same expression. "How can we be right and wrong?" I asked. The therapist leaned back in the chair, clasping her hands. "Because truth is rarely absolute in family conflicts. Sarah, you are right that you were treated with disrespect, that your daughter crossed unacceptable boundaries. What she said about the nursing home and the barn was cruel, and no context justifies that level of dehumanization. I felt a validation I did not expect, and new tears threatened to fall. But Dr. Laura continued, turning to me. You also need to recognize that you may have been suffocating at times, that your love, however genuine it was, may have become an emotional prison for Emily. I never wanted to. I know you didn't want to," she interrupted gently. "No mother who loves wants that, but intent and result are not always the same." Then she turned to Emily. "And you, young lady, are right that you had the right to grow up, to have your own life, to make your decisions. But you are completely wrong in how you handled it. Instead of setting healthy boundaries, of talking openly with your mother about your needs, you allowed resentment to grow until it became cruelty." Emily lowered her gaze, and worse, continued. "Dr. Laura," her voice becoming firmer, "you used the love your mother felt for you as a weapon against her. You knew she would sign those papers because she trusted you. You may not have planned to trick her consciously, but deep down you knew you were taking advantage of the situation." "I did not." Emily tried to protest, but her voice failed. And when she started to question, "When she got in your way, you did not have the courage to face her with honesty. Instead, you humiliated her in a way you knew would destroy her." The silence that followed was loaded with truths unspoken for so long. Michael moved uncomfortably on the sofa, probably regretting having accepted this therapy. "The problem with you two," concluded Dr. Laura, "is that you never learned to be adult mother and daughter. Sarah, you stayed trapped in the role of protective mother of a girl who grew up a long time ago. And Emily, you stayed trapped in the role of resentful daughter who never had the courage to simply say, 'Mom, I love you, but I need space.'" I looked at my hands, those hands that worked so hard, that held Emily as a baby, that sewed her clothes, that hurt themselves to give her a better life. And I asked myself, was Dr. Laura right? Had I been suffocating? "I want to propose an exercise," said the therapist, taking 2 sheets of paper and 2 pens. "Each of you is going to write a letter to the other. But it is not a normal letter. It is a letter from the other person's point of view." "How?" asked Emily. "Sarah, you are going to write as if you were Emily, telling how it was growing up with you as a mother. And Emily, you are going to write as if you were Sarah, telling how it was to raise a daughter alone and then be treated that way." "This is ridiculous," murmured Emily. "It is uncomfortable," corrected Dr. Laura, "which is different from ridiculous. And you have 15 minutes. You can start." I took the pen with trembling fingers. Write from Emily's point of view. How could I do that? But I started letting the words flow without thinking much. I grew up knowing my mother loved me, but that love always came with a weight. She sacrificed so much that I felt I owed her my whole life. Every choice I made seemed like a betrayal when it was not what she wanted for me. I love her, but sometimes I just wanted to be free to make mistakes without feeling I was hurting her. I stopped feeling the tears return. It was too painful to see things from her perspective, imagining that my love could have been a burden. When the 15 minutes ended, Dr. Laura asked us to read aloud. I read first, my voice failing in several parts. When I finished, I looked at Emily. She was crying silently. "Your turn," the therapist told my daughter gently. Emily wiped her tears and began reading with a choked voice. "I worked until my bones hurt to give you everything I never had. I watched you grow and thought it was all worth it. I never expected gratitude, only love. But when you kicked me out of the house I built, I felt that everything I did meant nothing. I felt that I meant nothing." She stopped, unable to continue. Tears fell freely now, wetting the paper. Michael put his arm around her, trying to comfort her. "Did you see it?" asked Dr. Laura softly. "You both managed to understand, even if only for a moment, the other's point of view. That is empathy, and empathy is the first step toward healing. The session ended shortly after. We left the office emotionally exhausted. Emily and Michael went one way, I went another. But before we separated completely, my daughter turned around. "Mom," she said, her voice hoarse from crying, "I need to think about all this." "Me too," I replied. It was not an apology. It was not a reconciliation. But it was something. It was a door that had opened, even if only a crack. The days that followed brought subtle but significant changes. I returned to the routine of living on the property. Emily and Michael managed the lodge. I minded my business. We crossed paths, occasionally exchanged polite but cold words. The guests probably noticed the tension, but no one commented on anything. I spent hours in the pasture with the horses. They did not judge. They held no grudges. They just accepted my presence with that simplicity only animals have. Star became my constant companion. I told her things I could not tell anyone, and she just moved her head as if she understood everything. One afternoon I was brushing Star's mane when I heard footsteps behind me. I turned and saw Emily standing a few meters away, hesitant. "Can I talk to you?" she asked. "Sure," I replied, trying to keep my voice neutral. She approached slowly, as if I were a wild animal that could get scared. We stood side by side, both looking at Star. "I remember when we got her," said Emily softly. "I was 6 years old. Dad brought her home in an old trailer. She was just a scared foal, trembling, afraid of everything." "I remember," I replied. "You insisted on sleeping in the barn that first night because you did not want her to be alone." A sad smile crossed Emily's face. "You brought blankets and stayed with me all night, telling me stories, singing softly. You did not sleep at all. It was worth it. You were happy." We stayed in silence for a moment. Then Emily said, her voice low, "I remember a lot of good things, Mom. It is not that I have forgotten them. It is just that the bad things became bigger, as if they occupied all the space in my head." I continued brushing Star's mane, giving her time to find the words. "The therapist gave me an exercise," she continued. "She asked me to make a list of all the good things you did for me, and another list of the bad things." She paused. The list of good things had 3 pages. The one of bad things, half a page. I felt my heart shrink, and even so, half a page was enough to make you hate me. "I do not hate you," she said quickly, looking at me for the first time. "I never hated you." I was confused, angry, scared of what Emily took a deep breath, of becoming you, of spending my whole life sacrificing myself, suffocating myself, never being anything other than a mother. When I looked at you, I saw a future that terrified me. And instead of talking about it, instead of processing those feelings, I just pushed you away. "But I never asked you to be like me," I protested. "I wanted you to be happy, to have opportunities I never had." "I know now," she said, wiping a tear. But in that moment, all I felt was pressure. The pressure to be grateful, to be the perfect daughter, to compensate for all your sacrifices. And I knew I would never achieve it. So I started resenting you for doing so much for me. The brutal honesty of those words left me breathless. But it was exactly what we needed, right? Even if it hurt. And Michael continued doubting. He saw my frustration and fed it. He said you were controlling, that I needed to break free, and I wanted to believe it because it was easier than admitting my own guilt. "Did you love him?" I asked, not knowing why that question mattered. "I love him," she corrected. "I still love him, but now I see that our relationship was built in part on that rebellion against you. And that is not healthy." Star touched my hand with her snout as if asking me to continue petting her. I obeyed, and the repetitive movement helped me organize my thoughts. "Emily," I began carefully, "I accept that I may have been suffocating, that my love sometimes imprisoned you instead of freeing you, but that does not justify what you did. The words you said, the way you treated me. I know," she whispered, "I know, and I have no excuse. That day when I said that about the nursing home and the barn, I saw the light go out in your eyes, and I felt a terrible pleasure because finally I had power over you. But a second later, I felt a horror so great because I realized I had become exactly the type of person I always despised." She sobbed, covering her face with her hands. "I became my father. I abandoned you the same way he abandoned me. And the worst part is that I knew I was doing it while I was doing it, and I did it anyway. I did not know what to say. A part of me wanted to comfort her, to tell her everything was fine, but everything was not fine, and pretending it was would be going back to old patterns. "What do you want from me now?" I finally asked. Emily lowered her hands, revealing a face shattered by guilt. "I do not know if I have the right to want anything, but I would like to have the opportunity to know you for real. Not like the mother who raised me, not like the woman I pushed away, but like Sarah. The woman you are, with your own dreams, with a life that does not revolve only around me." The answer surprised me. I did not expect that. "I do not even know who that Sarah is," I admitted. "I spent so much time being a mother that I forgot to be a person." "Then maybe we can discover it together," said a glimmer of hope in her eyes. "No pressure, no expectations, simply trying." I looked at my daughter. She seemed smaller somehow, more vulnerable. I saw in her the 6-year-old girl who slept in the barn, and also the 30-year-old woman who gave me the cruelest ultimatum. Both were Emily. Both were part of her. "Okay," I said slowly. "We can try, but with conditions." She nodded quickly. "Whatever. First, total honesty. If something bothers you, you say it without silent resentments that accumulate until they explode." "Agreed." Second, clear boundaries. You have your life, I have mine. Can we love each other without living inside each other? "Yes," she nodded, drying her tears. And third, I paused because this was the hardest one. "You need to do individual therapy, not just family sessions. You have things to resolve that have nothing to do with me, and you need to do it for yourself." Emily stayed silent for a moment, then nodded. "I already started." After that first session, I sought Dr. Laura and asked for private sessions. I go twice a week. I felt a wave of unexpected pride. My daughter was really trying to change. "And you, Mom?" she asked timidly. "Are you also going to do therapy alone?" The question caught me off guard. I hadn't thought about it. "You should," said Emily gently. "You also have things to resolve. The way Dad left you, the years of struggle, everything you went through with me. You deserve that space to heal." She was right. Once again, my daughter was showing me something I did not want to see. "I will think about it," I promised. We stood there a while longer in silence, watching the horses. It was not comfortable, but neither was it that suffocating tension from before. It was just two women trying to find a way. The following weeks brought subtle but significant changes. I started my own sessions with Dr. Laura, and it was like opening a box that had been closed for decades. We talked about David, about how his abandonment shaped my way of loving Emily. We talked about my need to be needed, to prove my worth through sacrifice. Sarah, the therapist, told me in a session, "You transformed your suffering into identity. You became the woman who suffers, who sacrifices, who endures everything. And subconsciously, you began to need that role, because if you were not suffering, who would you be?" The question haunted me for days. Who was I apart from a mother, apart from a victim, apart from a strong woman who endured everything I decided to find out? I started small. I signed up for a painting course in the city. I always liked to draw when I was young, but I abandoned it when Emily was born. There was no time, no money, no space for my little dreams. Now every Tuesday and Thursday afternoon, I took the bus and went to class. The other students were younger, but they welcomed me well. I discovered I had some talent, or at least enthusiasm. I painted the pasture, the horses, the sunset over the property. One afternoon, I was painting on the porch when Emily arrived from the market. She stopped observing my canvas. "It is pretty," she said, and she seemed sincere. "Thanks, I am taking a course. Seriously, I did not know you painted." "I did not know either," I replied with a half smile, or rather I had forgotten. She pulled up a chair and sat next to me, watching me work. It was the first time we were together like this, without palpable tension in the air, without heavy words that needed to be said. "Mom," she spoke after a while, "you are different. Different how? Lighter, as if, I don't know, as if you were less worried about being my mother and more about being yourself." Dr. Laura helped me see that I got lost in the role of mother, that I forgot to be Sarah. Emily nodded thoughtfully. "In my individual therapy, I have been working on something similar. How did I define myself so much against you that I forgot to define myself for myself? And are you discovering who you are? Little by little, she replied. It is harder than it seems, removing all the layers of resentment, of expectations, and finding who I really am underneath all that. We kept talking, and for the first time in years, we did not talk about the past or our wounds. We talked about small things. The new guest who had arrived with 3 dogs, the weather that was changing, a recipe Emily wanted to try. They were normal conversations of normal people, of mother and daughter who were learning to simply exist together. The family therapy sessions continued. Some were productive, others were emotional battlefields. In one of them, particularly difficult, Dr. Laura made us do a forgiveness exercise. Forgiveness, she explained, is not forgetting or justifying. It is releasing the weight you carry. It is a gift you give yourselves, not the person who hurt you. She gave us papers and asked us to write, "I forgive you for," and list everything. I wrote, "Emily, I forgive you for kicking me out. I forgive you for giving me that cruel ultimatum. I forgive you for using my love against me. I forgive you for making me feel I was worth nothing. But mainly I forgive you for being human, for making mistakes, for being imperfect, just as I need to forgive myself for the same things." When I read aloud, Emily cried. Then she read hers. "Mom, I forgive you for suffocating me even without wanting to. I forgive you for making me feel guilty even if it was not your intention. I forgive you for not seeing me as an adult. But mainly, I forgive you for being human, for doing the best you could with the tools you had. And I ask forgiveness from myself for having been so hard on you when you were only trying to love me the only way you knew how." There were no hugs that day. There was no big cinematic reconciliation moment. Just a silent understanding, a weight being slowly lifted from our shoulders. Months passed. The lodge prospered under the management of Emily and Michael. They were good at it, I had to admit. Organized, attentive with guests, creative in marketing strategies. They paid the rent on time, kept everything clean and functioning. And me, I was discovering Sarah. I returned to sewing not out of necessity, but for pleasure. I made embroidered cushions that I sold at a craft fair in the city. It was not much money, but it was mine earned with something I loved to do. I made friends in the painting course, women of my age who were also rediscovering who they were after years of being defined only by their roles as mothers and wives. We went out for coffee, went to the movies, complained about our back pains, and shared recipes. I had a life, my own life. One afternoon, 6 months after that first therapy session, Emily sought me out with a proposal. "Mom, Michael and I have been talking. The lodge is doing well, but we are thinking of expanding, adding a few more cabins, maybe a small event area." I felt my stomach tighten. "Emily, I am not going to sign anything else without—" "No," she interrupted me quickly. "It is not that. We want to propose a real partnership. Official. With contracts, lawyers, everything in order. You would be a partner with 40%, we with 60%. You would invest part of the money you received, and in exchange, you would have a share in the profits and a voice in big decisions." I looked at her surprised. "Why would you do that?" "Because it is fair," she replied simply. "It is your property. And why? Because we want to do it right this time. No tricks, no lies, no taking advantage of you." Michael appeared behind her, looking nervous but determined. "Ms. Sarah, I never formally apologized for my role in all this. I was arrogant, manipulative, and I treated you with disrespect. I do not expect you to forgive me, but I want you to know I am trying to be better." I stayed silent, processing. This version of Michael was different from the man I knew. Therapy was changing him too. "I need to think about it," I replied, "and talk to Attorney Charles. But I appreciate the honesty." I talked to my lawyer. He reviewed the proposal and said it was fair, even generous, considering I was not putting active work into the lodge. We analyzed every clause, every detail. A week later, we signed the contract. This time knowing exactly what I was signing, this time as equals. Dr. Laura celebrated the milestone in our next session. "This is huge. You built enough trust to do business together. It is a giant step. But she was right to be cautious. Remember, she warned, rebuilding trust is like building a house, brick by brick, patiently, and one false move can bring it all down again. We kept the sessions even when they seemed unnecessary, because we had learned that problems do not scream before exploding. They whisper for years until no one can hear them anymore. In a session 9 months after the start of therapy, Dr. Laura gave us a final exercise. I want you to write letters of gratitude. Not letters of forgiveness or apologies, but letters thanking the other person for what they brought you, even if it was through pain. I spent a whole week writing and rewriting. The day of the session, I read with a trembling voice, "Emily, I thank you for forcing me to see who I became. Thank you for breaking me in a way that made me have to rebuild myself better. Thank you for showing me that love without limits is not love, it is a prison. Thank you for growing and becoming a woman strong enough to face me, even if it was in the wrong way. And thank you for coming back, for trying, for not giving up on us, even when it would have been easier." Emily also read hers, crying. "Mom, I thank you for every sacrifice you made, even the ones I resented. Thank you for loving me with such intensity that it hurt. Thank you for not giving up on me even when I gave you every reason. Thank you for teaching me through your example of fighting against me that it is possible to be strong without being cruel. And I ask forgiveness from myself for having been so hard on you when you were only trying to love me the only way you knew how." A year had passed since that terrible ultimatum. A year since my daughter gave me a choice between the nursing home and the barn. A year since I decided I would not accept either option and would create my own choice. It was a Saturday afternoon, and we were organizing a party at the lodge. Nothing big, just a barbecue to celebrate the 1-year anniversary of the new partnership, as we joked. We had invited regular guests, some friends, Linda, and attorney Charles. I was in the kitchen preparing salads when Emily entered carrying a box. "Mom, I found this in the attic. I think you will want to see it." Inside the box were old photos. Baby Emily in my arms. Child Emily riding Star for the first time. Teen Emily at prom wearing the dress I had sewn. A whole life in yellowed photographs. I remember this day she said taking a specific photo. It was from her 10th birthday. We were both covered in flour because we tried to make a cake and it exploded in the kitchen. Laughing, completely happy. I remember, too, I replied feeling tears coming. "You said it was the best birthday of your life." "It was," she confirmed softly. "And it was not because of the cake or the gifts. It was because you were there, really present, laughing with me. Not the sacrificed and tired mom, just you being happy." I looked at her. "Do you know what Dr. Laura made me realize? That I got so used to suffering that I forgot how to be happy, as if joy were a betrayal of my sacrifices, and now asked Emily, 'Are you happy?' I thought about the question. Was I? My life was so different now. I had my house back, but divided. I had my daughter back, but transformed. I had money security, my own projects. But was I happy? I am at peace, I finally replied, which is maybe better than happiness. Happiness comes and goes. Peace stays. Peace, she repeated, savoring the word. Yes, I think I am at peace too, finally. Michael called from the outside area, warning that the barbecue was almost ready. Emily took the salads and left. I stayed alone in the kitchen for a moment, looking out the window. I saw my daughter outside, laughing with the guests. I saw the horses in the pasture grazing calmly. I saw my property, my house, my life, rebuilt in a way I never imagined, but somehow more real, more honest than before. Linda entered the kitchen and hugged me from behind. "How are you, friend? Good," I replied. And it was true. Better than I have been in a long time. Do you know, I am proud of you, right? Of what you did. Of how you stood firm but still left room for forgiveness. It was not immediate forgiveness, I corrected. It was a process. It is still a process. The best ones are, she said wisely. The party was good, simple, but full of human warmth. Attorney Charles made a toast, talking about justice and compassion walking together. People ate, drank, laughed. It was normal, everyday, perfect in its imperfection. Later, when the guests started leaving, Emily came towards me. "Mom, there is something I want to show you. Can you come with me?" We walked to the pasture. The sun was setting, painting the sky oranges and pinks. Star approached us, and Emily petted her with affection. "Do you remember when you said I would choose between the nursing home and the barn?" she asked, her voice low. My body tensed. It still hurt to talk about that day. I remember I was thinking about choices, about how sometimes we give people impossible choices trying to corner them. But the best people, the strongest ones, refuse to choose between bad options. They create their own choice. That was what I tried to do, I admitted. "And it worked," she said, looking at me. "You did not go to this nursing home, and you did not sleep with the horses. You kept the house, you regained your dignity, and yet you did not destroy me completely in the process. You created a third option, justice with mercy." It was not easy, I confessed. There were days when I only wanted pure revenge, days when I wanted to make you suffer as much as I suffered. "I know, and I would have deserved it," she said softly. "But you chose differently, and that saved me, Mom. It saved me from becoming irretrievably the horrible person I was becoming." We stayed in silence, watching the last rays of sun disappear on the horizon. "Michael and I are trying to have a baby," said Emily suddenly. My heart skipped a beat. "Really?" "Yes." "And I am terrified," she confessed. "Terrified of being a bad mother, of repeating mistakes, of loving too much or too little, of suffocating or neglecting. Of being human," I completed. She let out a choked laugh. "Yes, that. Emily." I held her hands. "You are going to make mistakes. Every parent makes mistakes. I made so many mistakes with you. But the difference is that now you are aware of that. You have tools, you have therapy, you have self-knowledge, and you have this." I squeezed her hands. "One day you will be a present grandmother," she said. "Not a grandmother who does everything, not a grandmother who assumes the role of mother, but a grandmother who is there, who loves, who supports, with healthy boundaries on both sides. I would like that very much," I replied emotionally. "And I promise," she continued, "that I will never, never let my child disrespect you, treat you like I treated you. Because one of the things I will teach him is gratitude, respect, and that love is not a prison." We hugged there in the pasture while Star grazed calmly beside us. It was not a fairy tale happy ending. It was real complicated, full of scars that would never disappear completely. But it was ours. And it was good. That night before sleeping, I opened my journal. I started writing during therapy, an exercise Dr. Laura suggested. I wrote, "Today. It has been exactly 1 year since Emily gave me that ultimatum. A year since my life changed completely. If someone had told me that day that we would be here now, working together, healing together, I would not have believed it. I learned that a mother's love does not have to mean endless sacrifice. That saying no, that setting boundaries, that demanding respect does not make me a bad mother. It makes me human. I learned that forgiving is not forgetting. It is carrying the memory of the pain, but choosing not to let it define who you are. I learned that it is never too late to start over. At 62, I am discovering who I am apart from a mother. And that discovery is terrifying and beautiful at the same time. And I learned that sometimes to save a relationship, you first need to destroy the sick version of it to then rebuild something new, stronger, more honest. I still have difficult days when resentment returns. Days when I look at Emily and remember the cruelty in those eyes when she gave me a choice between the nursing home and the barn. But I have more good days now. Days when I see my daughter and recognize the incredible woman she is becoming, not despite the mistakes, but through them. Life did not give us a happy ending. It gave us something better, a new opportunity. And this time, we are determined to do it right. I closed the journal and turned off the light. Through the window, I could see the pasture under the moonlight. The horses slept standing up. How do they do that? Star. Old and Wise looked at me for a moment before closing her eyes again. I smiled in the dark. When Emily gave me that cruel choice, she thought she was putting me in my place. But what she did not know is that I would create my own choice, a choice that would save me, that would save her, that would give us both something we thought we had lost forever, an opportunity to start over. I did not choose the nursing home where I would die slowly in abandonment. I did not choose the barn where I would be humiliated and dehumanized. I chose dignity. I chose justice. I chose the truth. And by doing that, I chose life. My own life, finally. Now, if you like this story, click subscribe. And tell me in the comments which part left you with your mouth open. Oh, and do not forget to become a member to have access to exclusive videos that I do not upload here. I wait for you there.